I still remember the smell of butterscotch and dust. My grandfather always kept a tin of Werther's Originals in the glove compartment right next to a worn-out Hopoe map of the Northeast and an old army lighter he never used. That morning, the sun had barely risen over the rooftops of West Caldwell, New Jersey, when I helped him into the passenger seat of my Civic. His hands were shaking slightly, not from age, though he was nearing 83, but from excitement. He wore his best jacket, the navy blue wool one with suede elbow patches, and the brown loafers he'd polished twice the night before. He even brought out his old camera, a Canon from the 90s hung around his neck like a proud badge. "Europe," he kept whispering to himself, eyes wide like a kid on Christmas morning. Never thought I'd see the Eiffel Tower in person. I didn't have the heart to question it then. It was his birthday. And this trip, it was supposed to be a gift from his sons, my father Rick and Uncle Marcus. First time out of the country. First family trip since Grandma died 3 years ago. That's how they'd sold it, a reconnection journey. I should have known better. When we arrived at the JFK drop-off, the chaos of departures buzzed around us. Luggage carts rattling, gate calls echoing through glass walls, families shouting over their goodbyes. Grandpa clutched his boarding envelope tightly. I watched him carefully as Rick and Marcus emerged from a black SUV, all designer sunglasses and 2 loud voices. My cousins trailed behind, already FaceTiming their friends about Rome life incoming. No one acknowledged Grandpa at first, just me. Rick finally leaned in, gave him a quick side hug. "Dad, glad you made it. You look great." He didn't wait for a response before turning to bark orders at the Delta desk. I offered to help with Grandpa's bag, but he refused. "I can carry my own weight," he said with a grin, "even if it's mostly arthritis." We made it past security with little trouble, and that's when things started to feel off. Rick and Marcus kept glancing at their phones, whispering. A steward approached them, and I caught bits of hushed tones form hospice signature, boarding groups. Grandpa was too busy marveling at the duty-free whiskey shelves to notice. Finally, at gate B22, the family gathered. Boarding was called. One by one, they filed forward. I hung back with Grandpa. He stepped forward to scan his pass, but the agent paused, looked at her screen, then frowned. "I'm sorry, sir," she said politely. "This boarding pass isn't valid. It's marked void." Grandpa blinked. "That can't be right. My sons, they said everything was booked." Rick stepped in, smooth as ever. "Oh, right, Dad. I forgot to mention. There's been a last-minute health waiver issue. Just a formality. The airline's being overcautious about senior passengers. You'll have to stay back a few days. We already set up a temporary medical stay just until we sort it out. Think of it like a spa weekend, huh?" The way he said it was practiced, polished, like a car salesman closing a deal he knew was full of rust. Grandpa looked at me confused. "A medical stay?" Uncle Marcus handed a manila envelope to a staffer nearby. I caught a glimpse of bold letters on the outside St. Vincent's Elder Transition Program. That wasn't a hotel. That was an assisted living facility. "No," I said sharply. "No, this wasn't the plan. He was supposed to fly with us." Rick flashed his grin, the one I'd learned to distrust since I was 10. "Elise, relax. It's a precaution. Besides, you've got work, don't you? FBI training doesn't pause for passport stamps." I stepped between Grandpa and the gate. He's not going anywhere unless he wants to. And this wasn't part of the agreement. That's when Grandpa's hands began to tremble, not from excitement this time, but from something heavier. He looked around at his family, his sons waiting for one of them to say this was all a misunderstanding. No one did. I gave them the money, he said quietly, voice cracking. I cashed out the annuity, paid for the trip, paid for everyone. Rick was already walking toward the jet bridge. "You'll thank us later, Dad. Just relax. We'll send postcards." They boarded. They left him standing there. And me. The airline staff were kind enough to help us sit down at a nearby bench. Grandpa stared ahead blankly, like someone watching a train they just missed. Except this train was never meant to let him on. I put my hand on his shoulder. "We're not letting this slide," I said. He shook his head slowly. "Elise, I signed everything. I didn't know." I did. Or at least I should have. See, I'd been trained to spot fraud. I could sniff out a fake trust document in under 10 minutes. But but I hadn't thought to look inside my own family. That night, I drove him to the temporary care facility they'd registered under his name. The receptionist welcomed him warmly, but when she asked me to sign a power of attorney confirmation, every cell in my body lit up in warning. I asked for a copy. She hesitated. "It's already on file," she said. "Under whose signature?" "Marcus Whitmore, his son." I stared at her. "That's not valid, not without witness documentation and consent proof." She blinked. "It was notarized 2 weeks ago." 2 weeks. That was when they invited him to Sunday brunch and asked him to bring his social security card just in case the airline needed backup ID. They'd planned it all. I took Grandpa home that night, told the facility we'd think it over. Then I sat on my laptop until dawn, sifting through county property filings, annuity withdrawals, and bank transfers. It was all there, every paper trail, all pointing to Rick and Marcus. They hadn't just left Grandpa behind. They'd robbed him, and they thought they'd get away with it. They didn't know who I was, but they were about to find out. The next morning, I didn't go to work. I brewed 2 cups of black coffee, his just the way he liked it, 2 sugars and a splash of milk, and found Grandpa already outside in the yard. He was sitting in his favorite wicker chair, wrapped in his old green flannel, just watching the trees sway. There was a calmness to him, but beneath it, a stillness that felt too quiet. "You're up early?" I said, handing him the mug. He took it with a soft smile, fingers brushing mine. "Didn't sleep much. My brain won't stop rewinding the last 48 hours, like a film reel that keeps jamming." I sat beside him, unsure where to start. How do you tell the man who taught you how to tie your shoes that his own sons might have stolen his dignity, his money, his autonomy? But I didn't have to. He already knew. "You found something, didn't you?" he asked, his voice low, steady. I nodded, pulling the folder from my tote bag and placing it between us like a confession. "It's not just the flight, Grandpa. They filed power of attorney documents under your name. Marcus had them notarized, but the signature, it's not yours. Not the real you, anyway." His eyes didn't flinch. I thought I was losing my memory. They kept suggesting I was forgetting things, that I needed help organizing bills, managing medications, and I started to believe them. I swallowed hard. This wasn't just fraud, it was grooming. Psychological erosion wrapped in smiles and birthday dinners. "They also rerouted a pension deposit last week," I continued. "It was a test, I think, to see how much they could siphon without triggering red flags." Grandpa blinked, and I could see the sting of betrayal settle behind his tired eyes. They always talked big Rick with his lake house dreams, Marcus chasing some crypto miracle. But I thought at the end of the day, I raised them better than this. The silence between us stretched like tension wire. Then I said, "Grandpa, we have options. I already contacted an attorney. Her name is Claire Mendel. She works for the Elder Advocacy Project under the state's Justice Department. She's discreet and she's good." He looked at me. "Do we really want to drag this through court?" I didn't answer right away. Instead, I asked, "Do you want them to get away with it?" He didn't answer either. Later that day, I met Claire at a coffee shop near the courthouse. She was in her late 30s, calm, focused, with the kind of eyes that missed nothing. She wore a navy pantsuit with scuffed flats, and when she shook my hand, her grip was warm but firm. "You did the right thing coming to me," she said as we settled into a booth. I slid over the copies, bank statements, POA filings, even a voice memo I'd recorded during Rick's phone call weeks ago where he'd hinted at streamlining Dad's future. Claire reviewed each page like a surgeon. "This is classic coercive control paired with financial exploitation. They're not amateurs, which makes this dangerous. But it's also traceable." I glanced around, lowering my voice. "If we push this, they'll retaliate. They might try to discredit him, use his age, his mild forgetfulness, anything to claim he's not competent." Claire nodded. "Which is why we need to act fast. First, we get a temporary protective injunction over his financial accounts. Second, we petition for emergency revocation of the current POA and assign you as interim guardian. But we'll need his consent, his direct testimony. Are you ready for that?" I hesitated. "I am. But I don't know if he is." Claire leaned forward. Elise, you're not just protecting your grandfather. You're making a precedent for people whose families weaponize trust against them. That night, I explained everything to Grandpa over tomato soup and grilled cheese. He listened silently, chewing slowly like every word needed time to digest. When I finished, he looked out the window. They were the last thing your grandmother and I ever fought about. She always said Rick had ambition, but no ethics, and Marcus was just a boy who never grew into a man. I defended them. I begged her to give them time. He turned to me. I think that time's up. 3 days later, we were in a courthouse in Newark. It wasn't dramatic, no courtroom like on TV. Just a pale office with buzzing fluorescent lights, a judge with tired eyes, and a hearing clerk who barely looked up from her screen. Claire did most of the talking, but when the judge turned to Grandpa and asked if he consented to having his son's power of attorney revoked, he straightened his back and said clearly, "They don't speak for me. My granddaughter does." And with that, the judge signed the emergency order. Rick and Marcus were officially blocked from accessing any account's property decisions or medical authority. We walked out into the crisp autumn air, and I watched Grandpa take the deepest breath I'd seen from him in months. "Feels like I got a piece of myself back," he said. "Maybe not the whole thing, but enough to keep going." That night I couldn't sleep. My phone buzzed around 11:52 p.m. It was an email, no subject line, just a forwarded thread from one of the community banks Rick used. Attached was a flagged transfer request, $42,500 routed from a business account under Whitmore Consulting LLC to an offshore entity in the Cayman Islands. The request had been blocked, but barely. I stared at the screen, pulse pounding. Rick was still trying, still moving, still willing to take whatever wasn't nailed down. But now we had leverage, and he didn't know just how close we were. The day after the blocked transfer, Claire and I drove to the county clerk's office just after sunrise. She'd managed to pull a quiet favor access to probate documents tied to Grandpa's estate planning. I watched her sift through the files like she was defusing a bomb. "This can't be right," she muttered, flipping through a notarized will dated 7 months ago. "This document says that upon incapacitation or death, all assets, real estate, retirement funds, savings go to Marcus and Rick equally." She paused. "It also says that you're to receive a small education trust of $10,000. That's it." I stared at the signature. My grandfather's handwriting was neat and specific, the kind of cursive teachers used to admire. It was clumsy, uneven. "He didn't sign this," I said, not willingly. "He always told me the house would be split and the savings were meant for long-term health care, not some shallow inheritance war." Claire raised an eyebrow. "We'll need a handwriting expert. And someone to testify that your grandfather never authorized a will update." That night, Grandpa sat quietly at the kitchen table while I read the document aloud. His hands trembled slightly, but his voice didn't waver. "That's not my will," he said, calm and certain. "They brought me paperwork one night when I was half asleep. Said it was insurance forms for travel. Told me not to worry. I trusted them." He looked up at me. "Elise, I don't even remember picking up a pen." We took the next step, filing a formal complaint of elder fraud with the state probate board. The burden of proof was high, but we weren't coming empty-handed. Claire had already lined up 3 pieces of evidence: a forensic handwriting analysis from a retired FBI analyst who compared the signature to birthday cards Grandpa had written over the years, a notarized statement from his primary physician about his mental clarity, and a voicemail left accidentally by Marcus to someone named Deshawn saying, "Once the estate clears, we'll be sitting pretty. Old man probably won't even notice." Claire sent the files to the assigned court investigator. Meanwhile, I started gathering something even more potent: community witnesses. Grandpa was well known in West Caldwell. He'd taught history at the local high school for over 3 decades, coached junior varsity baseball, ran the Memorial Day flag ceremony every year. His reputation wasn't just warm, it was legendary. I went door to door reconnecting with names I hadn't heard since childhood. Mr. Halprin from the VFW Hall remembered Grandpa helping him after a stroke. Mrs. Wong from 2 streets over brought out old photos from a school garden project. Even Deirdre, the grocery clerk who always slipped him an extra coupon, teared up when I told her what happened. "That man would walk my dog when I had back surgery," she said. "You tell me how anyone could throw him away like that." With their permission, I recorded their testimonials. I wanted the court to see not just the crime, but the man it was done to, and then something unexpected. One afternoon, I received a plain white envelope in our mailbox. No return address. Inside was a USB drive and a note. "I used to clean their house. Thought you should see this, M." I hesitated for a long moment before plugging it into my laptop. Inside 3 audio recordings. The first was Rick speaking with what sounded like a financial advisor. "We just need Dad to keep thinking we're taking care of him. By the time the account's clear, he won't even remember what was his." The second, Marcus complaining to someone about how annoying it was having Elise around snooping into everything like some wannabe lawyer. But the third was the one that made my blood run cold. It was Grandpa's voice. Tired, muffled. "I don't think I want to sign this. You said this was just a waiver." Then Rick, Dad, stopped being paranoid. "You're confused again. You've been forgetting stuff all week. You want us to help you or not." There was a long pause. Then the sound of a pen scratching paper. Claire listened to it 3 times. Then she quietly said, "We have enough to file for a temporary injunction on the will and freeze any property transitions. If the court agrees, your grandfather's assets are locked down until further notice." But we weren't the only ones making moves. 2 days later, we came home from the courthouse to find a car idling across the street. It was Rick's. He didn't get out, just stared, windows tinted, engine humming, watching. That night, Grandpa double-checked the locks. I could see something in his shoulders I hadn't seen in weeks: fear. "This isn't about money to them anymore," he said quietly. "This is about control." And just as I opened my mouth to reassure him, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. I answered. A gravelly voice said, "You think you're clever, huh? You're not the only one who can play dirty." Then it hung up. The next morning, I woke up to a dozen missed calls and 5 voicemails, none from numbers I recognized. My inbox had exploded overnight. The subject lines read like something out of a nightmare elder abuse scandal. Former teacher defrauded by own sons. "Do you have a comment about your grandfather's estate?" I barely had time to breathe before Claire called. "It's out," she said. No preamble. Someone leaked the injunction filing, probably from the court clerk's office. The local press ran it, and now it's gone statewide. I checked social media. There it was, Grandpa's name trending along with an old yearbook photo of him in front of a chalkboard, smiling with his sleeves rolled up. Someone had captioned it, "How could they do this to Mr. Whitmore?" Another post read, "He taught me about the Constitution. Now he needs protection from his own kids." I turned to look at Grandpa. He was already scrolling through his iPad, his face a careful mask. "People are defending me," he said after a long pause. "Not out of pity, because they remember who I was." I nodded. Still are. By noon, a crowd had started gathering outside our house. Not a mob neighbors, former students, even a few local reporters trying to be discreet. One man handed Grandpa a hand-carved wooden baseball bat. "Made this in shop class because of you," he said. "Just wanted you to know I believe you." But it wasn't all support. Around 3 p.m., a black SUV rolled slowly past the house. Inside, Marcus stared at us from the passenger seat, stone-faced. The window was cracked just enough for us to hear him say, "You think this circus helps your case?" Then they drove off. Claire arrived not long after with a man in tow, mid-40s, salt and pepper beard, sharp eyes. "This is Mitchell Raines," she said. "Private investigator, ex-FBI. He's vetted and you're going to need him." Mitchell didn't waste time. They're lawyering up fast. A boutique firm from the city known for estate loopholes and scorched earth defense. They're going to paint your grandfather as confused, mentally unfit, and you as a manipulative caretaker with ulterior motives. It's going to get ugly. I felt the walls close in for a moment. "What do we do?" Mitchell opened a folder. "We fight smart. I'm tracking financial trails, digital fingerprints. Meanwhile, you and Claire build the emotional narrative. You want to win this in court. You win the jury's hearts first." 2 days later, we held a press briefing, not a flashy one. Just Grandpa, me, Claire, and Mitchell standing on our porch. Grandpa spoke. Not as a victim, but as a veteran, a teacher, a father. I believed in family more than anything he said, voice clear, eyes steady. But when that belief is used against you, when love becomes leverage, that's not family. That's betrayal. The footage went viral within hours. National outlets picked it up. Justice for James trended across multiple states. Then came the retaliation. One evening, I walked out to my car to find the windshield shattered. A single note tucked beneath the wiper. Drop it, or next time we won't miss. I brought it inside, hands shaking. Grandpa looked at it and quietly said, "They're scared. That means we're doing something right." But the next blow was lower. We received a summons, a countersuit. Rick and Marcus were suing us for defamation, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and misuse of funds. The irony was nauseating. "They're playing the parental alienation card," Claire said, looking through the paperwork. "Claiming you're isolating him from his sons financially and emotionally. They'll try to flip the narrative." Mitchell wasn't fazed. "We let them try. Meanwhile, I have something better." He opened his laptop. This is a trail of email exchanges from Marcus's business account. He never deleted them, just archived. He sent a list of projected assets from the estate before the supposed will was even signed. Dates don't lie. We filed that evidence the next morning, but things didn't slow down. The opposing attorney called for a psychological evaluation of Grandpa. We were given 2 weeks to prepare. Claire fought it, but the judge agreed it was standard in contested elder fraud cases. When I told Grandpa, he took a deep breath and said, "If I need to prove I still have my mind, then I'll do it. I've been proving myself my whole life." We scheduled the evaluation at a neutral facility in Trenton. Mitchell drove us there. I waited outside the testing room for almost 4 hours, pacing, palms sweaty. When Grandpa finally came out, he looked tired, but proud. The doctor asked me who the current president was, he said, chuckling softly. Tried to trip me up with logic puzzles and recall tests. Poor guy didn't expect me to ask him about the Supreme Court makeup. That night I sat on the porch with him again. The stars were faint but visible. He sipped his tea slowly. "You know," he said, "all my life I thought the worst thing was being forgotten. But it's not. The worst thing is being remembered for something that isn't you. And now I get to change that." I reached over and held his hand. We didn't say anything more until my phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. Just one photo, a document. And the heading read, "Amendment to Last Will and Testament Undated, Unwitnessed." The document was grainy, like it had been scanned too many times, but the heading was clear enough to make my stomach drop. Amendment to the Last Will and Testament of James Whitmore. No date, no witness signatures, just a shaky scribble at the bottom that looked vaguely like Grandpa's initials. Claire held it up against the original will like a scientist examining a fossil. "It's not just irregular," she said slowly. "It's inadmissible if we can prove it came from their side." But Mitchell wasn't so sure. "It's bait. They're counting on confusion. This could be just enough to stall the case or force a settlement. And if the judge buys it as authentic, everything resets." The next day, we filed a request to have the amendment examined by an independent forensic specialist. In the meantime, our court date was locked. 10 days away. 1 week to gather final evidence, prepare Grandpa for questioning, and brace for whatever show Rick and Marcus had planned. Mitchell doubled security. Claire was up till 2 a.m. every night prepping legal responses. I barely slept at all. And then a break, one we never saw coming. A woman named Yolanda Vargas walked into Claire's office unannounced. Mid-50s, crisp gray bob carrying a reusable grocery bag filled with manila envelopes. "I cleaned for Rick Whitmore for 6 years," she said calmly. "And I saw something I think you need to see." Inside the envelopes, printed emails, photos of bank documents, and handwritten notes with to-do lists like move dad's pills, AM dose to PM, and set a PIB. Notary, say it's DMV stuff. Claire's eyes widened. "Did you take these?" Yolanda nodded. He never paid attention. He assumed I didn't speak English. He talked about the plan like I was furniture. But the photo that stopped everything showed Marcus holding a pen while Grandpa slumped in his chair, eyes glazed. In the background, a notary seal kit. Yolanda whispered. They told him it was for taxes. We filed everything immediately. Claire had Yolanda sign an affidavit. Mitchell submitted the time-stamped photos. That same day, the judge granted a motion to question both Rick and Marcus under oath in open court. Suddenly, their attorneys were scrambling, and we were ready. The courtroom was cold and formal. Grandpa wore a navy suit and carried his old army pin on his lapel. I sat beside him, hands tight in my lap, heart pounding like a drum. Rick was called first. He tried charm. Your Honor, this is all a sad misunderstanding. Our father, he's confused sometimes, and Elise, bless her heart, has always had a vivid imagination. Claire stood. Can you explain this note, Mr. Whitmore? She held up one of Yolanda's images, the one where he wrote, "Sell fast before Dad changes mind." He flinched. That's not my handwriting. Your email metadata says otherwise. Would you like to reconsider your answer? His lawyer whispered furiously, but it was too late. The judge raised an eyebrow. Perjury carries consequences, Mr. Whitmore. Then came Marcus. He barely got 2 sentences in before Mitchell passed Claire a slip of paper. Play it, he mouthed. It was the voicemail, the one Marcus left for Deshawn. Claire hit play. Once the estate clears, we're golden. Old man won't remember any of it anyway. Just smile, nod, and cash the checks. The courtroom went silent. Grandpa didn't blink. He sat perfectly still like a statue carved out of dignity and grief. Then something happened I didn't expect. The judge leaned forward. Mr. Whitmore, have you ever had a conversation with your father about his estate that was recorded or witnessed in a legitimate legal capacity? Marcus opened his mouth, then closed it. For the first time, I saw something crack behind his eyes. Not arrogance, not confidence. Panic. Outside, the media waited. Inside, the judge set a trial date, formal review of the contested will and all supporting documents. Claire and I exchanged a glance. We had traction, but the fight wasn't over. As we were leaving, Grandpa paused near the courthouse steps, watching the sky turn orange with early dusk. They looked right through me, he said softly, like I was a burden, not blood. I put a hand on his shoulder. You're not invisible anymore, Grandpa. Not now, not ever. Then Mitchell's phone buzzed. He looked down. His face darkened. We've got a problem, he said. Someone just tried to access your grandfather's bank account again, this time using a power of attorney form we never signed. Mitchell's voice cut through the hallway like a blade. They filed a power of attorney form in New Mexico claiming your grandfather was temporarily residing there under medical supervision. They even listed a rehab facility address. We called. No record of him. My stomach turned. So they forged medical residency now? Yes, Claire said grimly, pulling up the scanned document. And whoever filed it used an old signature of James from his military benefits paperwork. They're not just desperate anymore. They're bold. Grandpa sat silently beside me in the firm's conference room. The lines on his face deeper, not from age, but from something heavier, the weight of betrayal that kept compounding. How much more do they think they can take from me? He asked, voice almost too quiet. I took his hand. They can't. Not anymore. Over the next 72 hours, Claire assembled what she called our final wall ironclad evidence to dismantle every legal trap Rick and Marcus had set. Mitchell tracked the forged POA to a remote notary in Santa Fe. The woman remembered the day it was stamped. He said his dad had dementia and couldn't travel. Had a folder with medical notes. I didn't know she said over the phone, guilt obvious. I thought it was real. She agreed to provide a written statement. Meanwhile, I drove back to Grandpa's house, needing air, needing space to think. That's when I found it. Hidden inside a faded folder marked Old Taxes were letters, dozens of them handwritten by Grandpa to Rick and Marcus over the years. None were sent, none had stamps, just raw, unfinished drafts. Apologies, pleas, memories. In one, he wrote, I know I wasn't always easy, but I loved you boys. I still do. I just wish you'd come home without asking for something. I sat there crying alone in a room filled with broken hopes. That night I made a decision. We weren't just going to prove fraud, we were going to make sure this never happened again to anyone. Claire had a contact at the DA's office, Angela Sims, lead prosecutor for elder abuse in the Tri-County area. We handed her everything: the fake POA, the New Mexico notary's testimony, Yolanda's statement, the voicemail, and every forged transaction from the joint account Marcus had quietly kept open. Angela moved fast. Within 2 days, subpoenas were issued, including one to Rick's real estate holdings. Turns out he'd already liquidated 2 of Grandpa's old assets, commercial lots that hadn't even been transferred legally yet. They were mid-escrow, and that's when Angela froze them. Meanwhile, the media caught wind. One local paper ran a headline, "Decorated veteran targeted in family fraud scheme, granddaughter fights back." Grandpa's photo was right there, standing next to me on the courthouse steps. His cane in one hand, the other clenched by his side. "You sure about this?" I asked him that morning. "They'll come for us harder now." He looked up at me, eyes clearer than they'd been in weeks. "I'm not afraid of my sons anymore." The day of the pre-trial hearing arrived. The courtroom buzzed with a tension you could taste. Angela represented the state's interest, now not just us. Claire sat beside me, flipping notes, her fingers never still. Rick entered first, his suit sharper than usual, but his smile stiff. Marcus trailed behind, eyes darting like a caged animal. Angela stood. "We have reason to believe Mr. Rick Whitmore and Mr. Marcus Whitmore engaged in a coordinated scheme to defraud James Whitmore, a vulnerable adult, through the use of forged legal documents, coercion, and financial exploitation. The state moves to consolidate this into a criminal case pending further discovery." Their attorney tried to object. "These accusations are based on circumstantial evidence and hearsay," Angela cut in. "We have digital trails, financial records, voicemail, testimony from their own household employee, and a sworn confession from the notary in Santa Fe." The judge leaned forward. "Is the victim present today?" Grandpa stood. No cane, no hesitation. He looked at the judge, then at Rick and Marcus. "I trusted my children. I gave them everything I had. They gave me a chair in the corner and waited for me to die." The judge nodded solemnly. "This case will proceed to full trial." Outside, reporters swarmed. I tried to shield Grandpa from the flashes, but he didn't flinch. "Let them see me," he said. "Maybe someone else will be brave next time." That evening, as we pulled into his driveway, there was a note taped to the front door. No signature. Just 4 words written in permanent marker. "You think you won." I scanned the street. No one in sight. Mitchell filed a report. Claire offered to have Grandpa stay at her place for safety. But as we stood inside the kitchen, locking doors and turning off lights, he just said, "I'm not running from my own home." And then the landline rang. I answered. Static. Then a voice, familiar, cold. "You don't know everything yet, Elise. But you will. Soon." The line went dead before I could say a word. I stood there frozen, phone pressed to my ear, heart hammering against my ribs. Grandpa leaned against the doorway, his brow furrowed. "Who was it?" he asked. I didn't answer right away. My voice felt stuck, somewhere between fear and fury. Finally, I said, "Someone who wants us to know this isn't over." But they were wrong. It was over for the part of me that waited for justice to come politely. That night, I couldn't sleep. I paced the hallway outside Grandpa's room, hearing every creak in the floorboards, every branch tapping against the windows. Around 3 a.m., I sat on the porch with a blanket and watched the stars. A single yellow tulip bloomed in the garden below, out of season. It felt like a sign of hope, of something not yet finished. The next morning, Claire called. "We found the voice," she said. I blinked. "You traced it." We ran the audio against the voicemail from a few months ago, the one warning us not to dig. "It's a match. Elise, it's not Rick or Marcus." I felt the earth tilt. "Who?" Her voice dropped. "Judy Baker, your aunt." I staggered to the kitchen table, sitting hard. "That's impossible. She moved to Oregon years ago. She wasn't even close to Dad or Marcus." "Well, she's been closer than you think," Claire said. She's listed as a silent partner on 2 of Rick's property LLCs. Since 2019. I stared blankly at the tile floor. Judy, the same woman who used to send me birthday cards with scratch-off tickets taped inside, who once told me when I was 12 that I reminded her of Grandma. Why, I asked, mostly to myself. Claire sighed. We don't know yet, but I'm filing an emergency motion to include her in the financial injunction. I walked into Grandpa's room with shaking hands. He was sitting at his writing desk, a photo of him and Judy from 1975 in his palm. I didn't have to say anything. He knew. She always hated being left out, he murmured. Your grandmother named me executor in the will. Judy thought it should have been her. Said I'd waste it on fixing things that couldn't be fixed. He looked up. Guess she finally decided to prove a point. I sat beside him. She chose the worst way to do it. The days that followed blurred into meetings, motions, and witness preparation. The DA's office added Judy's name to the charges. A new hearing was scheduled. And then, without warning, Judy showed up. Not at the courthouse. At our house. Claire had just left when I opened the front door and saw her standing on the porch, a pale gray coat over a navy dress, her lipstick too bright for morning. Elise, she said calmly. Can we talk? Every instinct screamed to slam the door, but I didn't. 5 minutes, I said. She stepped inside like she owned the place. I'm not here to argue or confess, just to explain. I didn't offer her coffee. I didn't even sit. You stole from him, I said. You manipulated his kids into ruining him. And for what? Her eyes stayed dry, but her voice cracked. Because no one ever saw me. Not my parents, not James, not your father. I was the one keeping things together behind the scenes, cleaning up after all of you, and they tossed me aside. I laughed bitterly. So you destroyed your own brother's legacy for recognition. She stepped closer. You think this is about money? This is about being forgotten. Every picture, every letter, every damn story was about James and your grandmother. Like I never existed. So you made sure you'd be remembered, I said, as the one who broke everything. She opened her purse and pulled out an envelope. I came to return this. It's Grandpa's original will, the one before the changes, before he took me out of everything. I stared at the document. She held it like a peace offering, but it felt more like a threat. Why now, I asked. Because I already lost, she said, voice hollow. And I know it. But maybe you don't have to carry this hatred. You're not like the rest of us. I didn't take the envelope. I just pointed to the door. Get out. She did, slowly, but without a fight. And somehow that made it worse. A week later, the final hearing began. Angela laid it all out, timeline transactions testimonies. Grandpa testified again this time with a trembling hand but a steady voice. Rick and Marcus pled guilty under pressure, hoping to avoid jail. Judy didn't. She stood before the judge and said, I did what I thought was fair. The judge wasn't moved. Fairness without integrity is still injustice. The ruling came swiftly. Full restitution. Protective oversight on Grandpa's estate. Judy's claim to any inheritance was permanently revoked. Rick and Marcus were ordered into financial guardianship programs. And as for Grandpa, he was declared fully competent and placed under voluntary legal guardianship with me as primary advocate. Not out of necessity, but choice. The sun had barely risen the next day when Grandpa sat me down at the kitchen table. I want you to keep the house, he said. I know it's not flashy, but it's built strong. Like your grandma. I smiled. I'll take care of it. And you? In the spring, I planted a row of yellow tulips along the front fence. Grandpa watched from his chair, a blanket on his lap, a cup of Earl Grey in hand. You know, he said, your grandmother used to say, hope isn't about what might happen. It's about knowing you'll still stand, even if it doesn't. I nodded. Then we've got a whole garden full of it. That night, I sat by the window with Grandpa's old letters in my lap, the ones he never sent. I read them slowly, each word like a step closer to healing. And in that quiet, I realized something. He wasn't just a victim, and I wasn't just a witness. We were both something more. We were survivors. Story 2 at the Father's Day meal. My cousin grinned. We used up all of your money. Think of it as a communal present. My brother then added, family comes first, you say. Thus, we arrived first. I grinned, canceled all of their payments, and silently departed from the table. Everything changed 10 minutes later when the doorbell rang. My cousin Josh commented, you always did act like the wallet of the family, with a sneer that you normally save for someone you're about to intentionally embarrass. He clinked his glass. I remained silent. The way everyone else at the table laughed, too, shocked me. You're joking! I forced a laugh as I said, correct. My brother Dylan added, you always say family comes first, as he leaned back in his chair with his napkin still tucked under his collar like a bib. Thus, we arrived first. Easy math. I surveyed the table. Nobody appeared surprised. My mother, on the other hand, continued to drink her wine as if this were an ordinary Thursday. Not my father, who only a minute before had lifted his glass and toasted to close family relations. Not even Aunt Monica, who shrugged and blinked at me after crying over an overdraft fee. As usual, they were all aware that I had paid for the supper, reserved the Ridge and Maple private room, placed their favorite wine orders, paid in advance for dessert. Even though Father's Day was usually difficult, I still went. Nevertheless, it was attempted. However, there was more to this. My account was depleted by you. Silently, I said, that has really drained it. Josh drank his beverage, as calm as ever, present for the group. Consider it a reallocation of family finances. Since you never say no, we all reasoned that it made sense. It was just sitting there, dude, Dylan said, leaning closer. Money is only a tool, yet you act as though it's precious. You claim to love us, correct? So what's the issue? I grinned, because I could finally see it clearly, not because I was all right. They believed that I was stuck and would always be the obliging idiot, that I was too tender to leave. However, they overlooked a crucial detail. I had the receipts, even though I paid for dinner. Without much fanfare, I took out my phone, opened the banking app, and began to swipe. Josh continued to discuss a fresh startup concept. On his second bourbon, Dylan was. Nobody took notice. Every automatic payment linked to their names was frozen by me. I had been paying Josh's rent under a false name on his lease, and I had paid Dylan's auto insurance since his DUI. Spotify for the family, Amazon Prime for mom, everything. On the final one, I hit confirm. Then I got to my feet. Where are you heading? That asked, finally paying attention. Bathroom, I said, won't be long, but I didn't head for the bathroom. I walked straight out the restaurant door into the summer dusk. Everything changed 10 minutes later when the doorbell rang. The first text came before I even reached the parking lot. Dylan, what did you do? Then another. Mom, sweetheart, can you please come back? There's been a misunderstanding. And then one that made me stop walking. Josh, bro, it was a joke. Come on, a joke. They thought draining my account, mocking me in front of a room full of extended family, and raising a toast to my humiliation was a joke. Let's rewind. It didn't start at dinner. It started long before, years before. I was the fixer, the one they called when the electric bill was overdue, when Josh's credit card got declined, when Dylan's license got suspended and he needed an Uber account just for a few weeks. They didn't ask. They assumed, like the time Mom texted, "Hey honey, we put you down as co-signer for Dylan's loan. Just a formality. No need to worry." No. Can we know? Would you mind? Or when Dad broke his foot. And somehow it became my job to pay the mortgage for 3 months straight. You don't want us to lose the house, do you? They never forgot to send that kind of message. Then came the group chat incident. 6 months ago, Josh screenshotted my dating profile and dropped it in the family group with the caption, "Our local bank account trying to find love." It got 23 laughing reactions. Even Aunt Monica added, "He's such a sweet boy, always helping, hope someone sees his heart under all that desperation." No one defended me, not even Mom. When I confronted her later, she just said they're just teasing. That's what families do. It's love, just not gentle. The money started disappearing slowly. At first, I thought I was just spending too much. Food bills, the usual. But then I started noticing transfers I didn't make. A Venmo charge titled Wedding Deposit. But I wasn't dating anyone. A $900 Apple Pay withdrawal I couldn't trace. Turns out, Dylan had been using an old connected device when I forgot to authorize. When I brought it up, he laughed. "You're acting like you're broke," he said. "You make, 6 figures? Don't pretend it pains you." Then came Dad. He started phoning more regularly, but never to say hi. It was always, "Do you have a second?" Which actually meant, "Can I guilt you into something?" He was delinquent on taxes. Claimed it was a clerical error. I paid it. He needed aid with repairs. I paid it. Then I found out from a relative. He told everyone he paid for my college. That was the line. The actual tipping moment prior to the meal. 1 week prior, I saw that my savings account had decreased by $12,300. Lost. Before I phoned the bank, I believed it to be fraud. They claimed that my IP address had authorized the transfer. It wasn't me, though. I submitted a report. Then I recalled that 2 weeks prior, Josh had borrowed my laptop, said that he was misbehaving. It never occurred to me to see if he had set up remote access. He didn't even flinch when I challenged him. "Why are you behaving like a cop man?" "It's only financial. We required it." I inquired as to our identity. He grinned. That meal with the family, the one in which he used a punchline to toast my fractured spine. I came to a realization. In no way were they parasites. Parasites, when they're feeding, don't laugh. They were designers. Where I was, they constructed this machine simply to harvest me. What's the worst? I thought that if I offered enough, they may eventually regard me as family, so I let them. As a person deserving of respect, not just a bank. I just got the punchline, though. I didn't go home after leaving that eatery. Since I had been doing more than just mailing money, I went to my office and accessed my files. I had been hoarding items, screenshots, communications, records of sound. Josh really mentioned if he finds out we took that money in that instance. Let's just say we believed it to be his father's gift. He refuses to push. Or when Dylan made a joke about how simple it was to gaslight me in the group chat. However, there was another factor. Something I kept to myself. Do you recall the family investment that I was duped into 2 years ago by my father, the Temecula land that was intended to be a vineyard? Well, when something didn't sit right last month, I pulled the records. You know what? They obtained a business loan by using my identity. And you know what else? They never reimbursed it. They sent all the mailings to a family PO, so I was unaware that my credit was being taken. Josh opened the package. Therefore, the explosion was not caused by the supper. It was the final spark. That doorbell, too. The conflict began at that point. Not the type they were hoping for, though. So I was not going to yell. Piece by piece, I was going to dismantle their kingdom. It all began with the person on the other side of the door. My family did not anticipate the individual on the other side of the door. More significantly, Myra, my financial counselor, assisted me in tracking down each questionable transaction. Each and every illegal entry. Each time the family touched something they shouldn't have touched. She had no smile on her face. She had her phone in one hand and a manila folder in the other. Without a word, I opened the door for her behind me. It was a frozen artwork, the dining room. Josh continues to hold his drink in midair. Under the table, Dylan was texting and his father was chewing slowly as if he was unaware that a storm had just arrived. Mom was the first to break the stillness. "Who is this?" I gestured for Mara to join me as I took a seat at the head of the table. "This is the person who helped me figure out where my savings went," I remarked coolly. Josh gave a snort. "Come on, please. This doesn't need to be theatrical. Helping Familia is not illegal." Mara spread out 5 pages in front of me after opening the folder. Like cards in a high-stakes game of poker, I slid them over the table one by one. An application for a signed loan in my name. Josh's cryptocurrency wallet receives a bank transfer from my business account. A screen grab of Dylan using a fake IP to access my online banking. A group chat transcript that includes timestamps. A digital audio recording with the title, Dad's Plan. I pressed the play button on my phone. The room echoed with Dad's voice. Look, we'll just say it was for him if he finds out. Father's Day retirement presents are irrelevant. He is not going to sue us. He's too lenient. Nobody breathed. Mara went on to say that the recording came from a cloud backup. You were unaware that his Dropbox sync was still active. Dad hit the table with his glass. Private conversations are being recorded by you now. I gave him a look. Be calm. Steady. No, you did record them. You simply lacked the intelligence to remove them. Josh abruptly got to his feet. This is crazy. You're portraying us as criminals. It was a miscommunication within the family. I was given a tiny black flash drive by Mara. Give them the motivation. I took my laptop out and turned it on. It wasn't an audio file that played next. The folder was called Family. Emphasize. Dad. Emphasize. Money. Emphasize. I agree. PDF forged digital created from a template my cousin had used to fake a contract between me and Dylan. It's signed. Mine. However, I never signed it. Mara zoomed in on the metadata created by Josh Lockwood. I turned the screen. Recognize this, Josh. His mouth opened, then closed. Dylan cursed under his breath. I didn't know he was going to actually file it, he muttered. Louder, I said. Dylan looked up. I said I didn't know he was going to file it. It was supposed to be for emergencies and the $12,000 removed from my account last week, I asked. Silence. That's when Mom stood up, her voice trembling. You're tearing this family apart over some money. I laughed. That type of chuckle. That sounds more like a sob breaking in half. No, Mom. You did. When you all decided that love was measured in withdrawals, I dug into my suitcase and took out one final thing. An envelope containing copies of every payment I'd made in their names in the previous 3 years, over $86,000. I read the total aloud. Josh became white. Dylan rose up, murmuring, I need air, and exited the room. Dad glanced down at his dish as it had betrayed him and Mom. She just whispered, We didn't know it was that much. That's when the doorbell rang again. Everyone winced. I grinned. That's for you, I believe. When Dad opened the door, my cousin's ex-boyfriend, Eric, entered. Everyone referred to that person as a failure and an alcoholic. However, he nodded courteously at me while holding a tablet in his hand. Are you ready? He inquired. I gave a nod. After setting the iPad on the table, he pressed the play button. 3 weeks prior, Josh was seen speaking to Eric on a video call. Listen, we're going to give him a Father's Day present that involves draining his account. Even if he becomes angry, he won't check. Let's twist it. What if he discovers we then cause him to question himself? You're skilled at acting naive. I assume you're skilled at feigning astonishment. Stop the video, Eric, just in case I save the call. I had to remind those who had truly deceived me. Lunge for the tablet, Josh. However, Mora was faster. Touch it again and I'll press charges, she threatened, snatching it back. Dad turned to face me, his neck's crimson veins showing. Do you believe that this elevates you above us? You simply made us seem foolish in front of one another. Family isn't that. Slowly, I got to my feet. No, that's speaking the truth at last. I then looked around the table at everyone. You are being notified. Every payment, transfer, co-signed loan, and automatic debit associated with your life has been canceled by me. Your subscriptions have expired. Netflix is no longer available. Spotify is no longer available. Josh's rent. Dylan's policy. Mom's debt from her grocery card. I didn't do it, I then added. Additionally, a complete report of the illegal loan that was taken out in my name will be sent to the IRS tomorrow. Dad, good luck with your audit. He sprang forward as if he were about to strike me. Eric used one hand to stop him. "Please sit down," he replied icily. The temperature dropped. After gathering the documents and putting the drive in my pocket, I turned to go. "You're really going after all this?" Josh mumbled. I paused at the entrance and turned around. "Yes," silently. "You showed me less respect than that." After that, I departed. Into the darkness. No drama, no shouting. Just a man who ultimately came to the conclusion that if the family name was shackled, it had no meaning. I hit the publish button the next morning. The video isn't dramatic. Don't cry for a selfie. Only the title of the post. In my household, family mattered a lot. I then included screenshots of the group conversation, the forged loan, Dad's audio, the fictitious payback agreement, and the bank records that showed $86,000 had been spent. The footage of Josh laughing about gaslighting me comes last. No one was tagged by me. I didn't have to. It had 12,000 shares in 3 hours. It reached a local subreddit by lunchtime. By nightfall, /entitled folks had it on the main page of Reddit. TikTok then took it up. Josh's statement, "You always say family comes first," was edited by a user. Therefore, we matched it with a gradual zoom on the bank statements and came first. In a single day, it received 3.2 million views. The tone was evident, even if I didn't read every remark. Think about making fun of someone who actually provided the funding for your life. At the dinner table, that grin. That's the cracking of generational trauma. Bro did a fantastic job. Keep quiet. Revenge tastes good. "Josh, who's the loser now?" Dylan texted me 19 times that night. "We must first speak. Then we are being ruined by that post. Kindly remove it." And lastly, do you find this amusing? You're setting your own family on fire. At about 8 p.m., I left him on Reddit. Someone I didn't recognize sent me a direct message. The reporter was from the area. People were inquiring whether the tale was genuine after it went viral online, she claimed. If I wanted to comment, she asked. I wrote her one line. "You haven't seen half of the paper trail for everything I posted." That evening, she released the article. Title, "First Family, Until the Funds Are Exhausted. A Silent Son. An Embezzlement of $86,000. The article became viral in the aftermath. Then the responses appeared. The next morning, Mom wrote a lengthy Facebook post. "Despite our imperfections, we remain a family. You shouldn't ruin the individuals you care about on the internet. It's important to forgive." She wasn't prepared for the comments. "When you took from him, did you forgive yourself?" It's not a free ticket to forgive. You're shocked that it's on video after raising a snake pit lady. Then Josh arrived. He attempted to post a counter-argument. Said I gave false information on everything. Said that there was a misunderstanding and that it was only financial help. He boasted about taking advantage of his cousin's guilt complex in a Reddit remark that was discovered 6 months ago. A dot. He didn't post anything that night, so he erased his profile. He got a lawyer. Believe it or not, I received a stop and desist letter typed in Comic Sans, claiming that I have defamed the family's heritage. I returned a one-page response. Only one phrase. Slander is not truth. And the day you turned my love into a weapon, you lost your heritage. Then something unexpected occurred. I got a call from the bank. It turns out that they started an official inquiry since Mara had reported so many questionable transactions. Dylan forged Josh's contract in order to obtain the Temecula Vineyard loan. It was everything being reviewed. 3 family accounts were placed on hold until they were verified. The loan in my name was then called by the IRS, being investigated for fraud, the vineyard industry. Dad attempted to qualify as a veteran-owned business. They discovered discrepancies in the records. Can you guess who gave the initial deed? Grandpa died in 2014. I hadn't even explained what had occurred to him yet. He just mentioned one thing when he phoned me. Told you. However, they were kneeling. In the meantime, I was performing a live act that I never imagined I would get to do. I took up residence in my new abode. Clear the area. No guilt trips, no noise. I create a channel on YouTube, not for retaliation, about financial literacy. The first video. How do you take back control when your family uses guilt as a weapon? In 3 days, it reached 300,000 views. Strangers began writing me to express their gratitude, stating that I had given them the confidence to break off relationships, refuse to be friends with someone who only brought blades, and stop bleeding. A nonprofit organization for adult children of toxic households then sent me an email. I was invited to present at their conference in the fall. Yes, I replied. Dylan made one final attempt. He appeared in front of my residence. Cheap flowers, sleepy eyes, and a hoodie. Claimed to want to speak. I barely opened the door to let you know that I've been making your life simpler for years. You made my life miserable for those same years. Your redemption story is not why I'm here. I shut the door after that. The last strike. Every login and number was altered by me. Mom's emergency joint account was closed. Canceled everything, including the Costco card, Spotify gym memberships, and Prime. I then made one last post. Just a picture of my keychain with a new tag account and a closed caption, no drama. Family wasn't the first, it turns out. The first person they used was me. Do you know what I discovered? I had lost my anger. Not after the remarks. Not after the videos became viral. Not even after the cease and desist letter, which was written like a passive-aggressive church bulletin or the bank inquiries. I had had enough of acting like I belonged to a family that only called me when there was still a debt to pay. Silence is a purchase of tranquility. Don't use being treated like a wallet with a heartbeat as an excuse for being too sensitive. Mom's last communication to me was brief. Your point has been made. Could we please proceed? I didn't respond, but I did continue. Not toward her, though. I updated my phone number. New SIM, new carrier. Don't forward, just 5 individuals have a new one. I have no DNA in common with any of them. I gave the YouTube channel my all attention. It's a brand now. That list on purpose. Within 48 hours, the first 2D drops were sold out. The Elderly Family. Spotify. I made my first playlist in its place. Title tracks to break negative connections to the cover image. Dylan's screen grab. My favorite part is that we need to text. The new storefront. I took some of what I got back, you see. Just enough, and in collaboration with a nearby group that promotes mental wellness. We started a tiny co-working cafe for those who had survived toxic households and guilt-raised kids who grew up to be responsible adults. It's bright and clean. Secure. Above the entrance is a name, first followed by that in a smaller typeface, since I was usually last. No more. Once more, the ribbon cutting went viral. Josh was tagged by someone. He remained silent. Dylan shared a narrative. Some people lose track of their food source. It nearly made me chuckle. I wasn't fed by you. I covered the cost of supper. Dessert was paid for by me. I even received spit in exchange for tipping. I eat a slice now, though. I don't have any sirens in my chest. I don't worry about who would message me at 2 a.m. to need a fast 400. It brought back memories of all we did for you as a child. I'll say it aloud. My decision to choose peace does not make me a villain. Refusing to pay for my own mistreatment does not make me nasty. Above all, I am not your narrative of salvation. Setting limits, not seeking retribution, is the theme of this tale. I don't forgive you at this point. We all give each other hugs. This is where I flourish in your absence. I claim that you no longer have access to me at this point. It's not because I'm chilly, but that I've finally realized how valuable I am.